The Jake Asman Show will begin shortly. Thanks to all these great Patreon members who help support the show. Get your SuperChats ready. Jake will be here in just a moment. If you love the New York Jets, this is the place to be. And now, the Jake Asman Show.
Are the Jets running out of top options to pursue a wide receiver? We'll talk about that and much more in today's Jake Asman Show. Plus, Robby Sabo, co-founder of JetsXFactor.com, is going to join us. A lot to get into, Jet fans. So let's hit it and get it started. Man, our Jets are primed for a historic season.
What up, guys? JB Smooth. As you know, I'm a big Jets fan. Looking forward to big things for this season coming up. A lot of great pieces here. Let's just keep our heads now. I know the season didn't start off well last year, but there's hope. We've got a lot of great guys on that team who are working and going to gel together. And then by the time your boy Aaron gets back, we're going to be ready. We're going to get right. Don't worry. NYC all day.
We bleed Jets green each and every day. This is not the same old Jets. We have Garrett Wilson. Let's go. We have Breece Hall. Please subscribe and hit the like button below. Super Chat, baby. Cut the line. We have Sauce Gardner. We have Quinnen Williams. The Jets bandwagon is loaded. Now it's time to talk all things New York Jets. It's the Jake Asman Show. Here we go. Welcome in, everybody. It is indeed the Jake Asman Show with me, Jake Asman. If you're watching live, please hit the like button. If you're not watching live, please hit the like button. And, of course, to everyone tuned in, subscribe to the channel. And I can't thank you all enough for helping me reach over 36,000 subscribers. Welcome in. And, of course, we got a lot to talk about with the Jets. Robby Sabo is running a bit late. A last-second business meeting was sprung on him, so he's going to join us about midway through the show. So if you're just here for Robby, skip ahead if you're not watching live. And if you are watching live, too bad you were stuck with me. All right, so before we talk about some wide receiver options, because it does kind of feel like a lot of those top options that we thought, hey, maybe they could be Jets. Well, they're not going to be Jets. Mike Evans re-signed with Tampa. Michael Pittman is not leaving the Indianapolis Colts. T. Higgins was franchise tagged by the Bengals. So what moves at wide receiver could the Jets potentially make when free agency gets underway just 6 days from now? We'll talk about that. But first, it came out right before I went live that the Jets have, in fact, released tight end C.J. Uzomah. No surprise. We knew this was coming. The move will save $5 million on the cap. And look, I'll say this for C.J. Uzomah. It was the right move at the time. It unfortunately didn't work out. And once he got hurt at the end of the season, you knew his time with the Jets was up. They drafted Jeremy Ruckert in the third round a couple of years ago. They obviously have Tyler Conklin, who's been production-wise a top 10 tight end at his position the last 2 years in both yards and receptions. I think with a healthy Aaron Rodgers, both Conklin and Ruckert is more than enough to have a prolific passing attack at that position. I mean, think about it. The Jets had one touchdown all year from a tight end, and it was Uzomah in the game against the Kansas City Chiefs, and that was in what? Week 3 of the season? Week 4 of the season it was? Crazy. It just didn't work. CJ was a really good guy, good locker room leader. Aaron Rodgers loved him, but he was making too much money for the lack of production, so no surprise that Uzomah has been cut. You knew this was coming. Obviously, Laken Tomlinson last week, Uzomah now. Jets will make several other cuts and cap restructures so they can generate more cap space. They have about $20 million right now before they restructure JFM, CJ Mosley, possibly extend Michael Carter and DJ Reed. They could restructure Quinnen's deal to save money. So there's a lot of moves the Jets can make between now and Monday to give themselves more financial flexibility, and that's where this is clearly headed. Now, I'll also say this for CJ Uzomah. To this date, he is still the only Jets player to do one of these.
You're watching the Jake Asman Show.
Thanks, CJ.
See, CJ?
Shout out to listener Snowball for getting that for us in training camp last summer. So good luck to CJ Uzomah. Good dude. Obviously didn't work out with the Jets the way we all wanted it to, but I wish him well. Stand-up guy, and everything you hear about him is that he is truly a good person, so you wish him well. Now let's talk about some receiver options for the Jets. The question that needs to be asked, are the top wide receiver options coming off the board? Well, the tippy top guys, the answer is yes. I mean, I don't think you could dispute that if you're a Jet fan. Mike Evans, back to Tampa. T. Higgins, back to Cincinnati. Michael Pittman, either going to be extended or tagged. He's not leaving Indy. They have said as much. So ultimately, yes, some of the top wide receiver options are off the board. This shouldn't be a big surprise, though. It was always likely going to be exactly like how it has gone so far. The top options left include Hollywood Brown, Calvin Ridley, Darnell Mooney, Tyler Boyd, Gabe Davis, Michael Thomas, DJ Chark. Other names to watch also include Josh Reynolds. And you can kind of go down the list. Curtis Samuel, another name I like. Basically, I believe other than Calvin Ridley, it's a lot of 3s and 4s if you're going to slot him. I don't think Gabe Davis is a number 2. Michael Thomas is no longer reliable. I want nothing to do with him. I think if the Jets can't get Calvin Ridley, they need to look for a trade that nobody is thinking of. Now, Courtland Sutton's a name to watch, but we've mentioned him. Who's the guy that's available that nobody knows is available? There's always someone every year. Joe Douglas needs to make his Mike Tannenbaum move this offseason, his Mike McCagden move this offseason. McCagden landed Brandon Marshall when no one had that happening for a 5th-round pick. Tannenbaum traded for Braylon Edwards and Santonio Holmes. What trade can Joe Douglas make for a receiver we're not thinking of? And maybe it is, simply put, maybe it is Courtland Sutton. And if it is Courtland Sutton, great, because he fits exactly what they need. But if it's not Sutton, who is the player that is out there that nobody is talking about that is going to get traded? That's what you're looking to see if you're the Jets. If you're Joe Douglas. Can you be creative and find a way to improve at wide receiver with a player no one's talking about? Remember, when Tyreek Hill got traded, no one had that happening. No one had A.J. Brown getting dealt during the draft, and maybe this is something that does actually happen during the draft. But I think if you're the Jets, you need to sign at least one wide receiver in the first wave of free agency. And then I think if you're the Jets, that 3rd-round pick in a loaded wide receiver class should also be used on a wide receiver. But to me, I hear some of the options, and I'm not even going to mention Odell Beckham Jr. All right? He's not even on my list. I want nothing to do with a guy who had 35 catches last year. He was up there in age now. Hasn't been good in a number of years. And to me, it's way more the name that you're getting than the actual production of the player. So I'm not even going to mention OBJ. But there's got to be a name that we're talking about or not talking about that's out there, and that's the guy the Jets need to figure out a way to get it done. Land that trade. Now, Brandon Ayuk's name is going to be mentioned. I still don't think the Niners are going to trade him. I think another name I would throw out there is Mike Williams of the Chargers. He has a huge cap hit. The Chargers are like $20 million over the cap. Could he be a cap casualty? Could we see even Keenan Allen potentially be available? He has a huge cap number. Now, Keenan Allen has said he expects to remain with the Chargers, but it's not up to him. Because the Chargers very easily could cut Allen or cut Williams, and then they had the 5th pick in the draft. They could take Malik Neighbors, who I think is pretty close to Marvin Harrison Jr., to be honest with you all. I'm a big Neighbors fan. He's the one guy, if he's there at 10, I think I would take Neighbors over like the 3rd or 4th tackle if that scenario existed. But the point being, there's options no one's talking about or aren't spending a lot of time on. And that's on Joe Douglas to figure out. I don't want to hear excuses. No one should be making excuses for a general manager who's going into his 5th full offseason with his job on the line. Year 6 of his contract. Those are the options you got to look at. The trades we're not thinking of, the cap casualties that haven't happened yet. And obviously, look, I think the Jets should pursue Calvin Ridley, but they're going to have a lot of competition for him. See, the Jets have a number 1 wide receiver. There's going to be teams pursuing Ridley that are willing to spend more because they don't have a number 1 receiver. And while Ridley's probably not a 1, he's the best available option that's hitting the market. Corey Davis out of retirement on a restructured, non-guaranteed one-year deal. Could that happen as one of their options at receiver? These are the things you got to explore. There are options for the Jets to improve there. The answer can't simply be, well, Lazard with Rodgers is a better player, and Rodgers fixes our receivers. No. Do I want them to draft someone at that position? Yes. Do I think they need to sign at least one free agent receiver? I do. And if it's not Ridley, I would look at Curtis Samuel, Tyler Boyd. Those are the guys I like. Tyler Boyd, I think, is so underrated. I think he's better than a number 3, but I think he's a victim of his circumstance. He plays in an offense with Jamar Chase and T. Higgins, who are true number 1 receivers. So I could see the Jets signing 2 guys in free agency. It's such a loaded receiver class in the draft that it will lower the market price for a lot of the second-tier wide receiver options. So, the Jets obviously aren't going to be able to land, that bona fide number 1. At least it doesn't appear like they can in free agency. Maybe they can in a trade. But they should be able to add 2 quality wide receivers in free agency and then another one in the draft. Let's say the Jets signed Calvin Ridley and Josh Reynolds. They should still take someone in the 3rd round. All right? We love Xavier Gibson. We like Jason Brownlee. Their roster spots aren't guaranteed. Allen Lazard was awful last year. Make him earn a spot. All right? If you got to carry 6 wide receivers, fine. Like, Randall Cobb is not on this team this year. He's going to be a coach if he wants to be involved with the Jets. The Jets need to put themselves in a spot where if Garrett Wilson, God forbid, did go down, you're not screwed. Where you have enough depth to get through. No one can replace Garrett Wilson. But right now, if he were to get hurt, you're looking at Allen Lazard, Xavier Gibson, Jason Brownlee. That stinks. They need 2 receivers, I think, in free agency and 1 in the draft. Guys get hurt. Things happen. That's how I would approach it. But if I'm the Jets, I'm coming away with Calvin Ridley. And if I can't get Ridley, Curtis Samuel, Josh Reynolds, Darnell Mooney, these are guys I like. Now, here's the thing with Hollywood Brown, right? I think Hollywood Brown to the Jets is a possibility for one reason. The Jets' new wide receiver coach is Sean Jefferson. Sean Jefferson last year was with the Cardinals. His opinion on Hollywood Brown should, you would think, carry a lot of weight. Because why would you sign a player if your position coach is telling you, hey, he's not a good fit? So if I'm the Jets and I'm interested in Hollywood Brown, I'm consulting with my wide receiver coach first. So he's a cheaper option. He's still a solid player. He's more of a slot guy. I could see the Jets pursuing that. So he to me is a wild card, so to speak, name to watch. He's probably in that $10 to $13 million a year range, which is cheaper than Ridley, who's probably going to get close to 20. Because once again, the Jets don't need a number 1. Teams that are pursuing Ridley are going to view him as a number 1 at a necessity. But Sean Jefferson was with the Cardinals in 2022. That's the guy that could have some say on potentially adding Hollywood Brown. On that note, let's open it up to your comments and questions. We'll take some calls on the Gusbuster Umbrella Hotline. If you're tuning in late, Robby Sabo is set to join us. Robbie's going to be coming on the show a little bit late because he got called into a last second. So because of that, we're starting the show without him. We'll take your calls and read some super chats in the meantime. Today's Jake Asman Show is presented by our friends at Copper John's Beard Company. Folks, if you want your beard to look as good as the Copper John's Beard Company logo, then guess what? You got to use Copper John's beard products. They will make your beard smell nice, feel nice, look nice. Simple. CopperJohnsBeard.com. Promo code while you're there, Jake20, to get 20% off on any of their men's grooming products. They have soaps. They have colognes. But I would say more importantly, they have beard oil, beard balm, mustache wax, and guess what? Aftershave. That's right. You know when you shave and your skin breaks out? Not with Copper John's aftershave. Check it out. All the materials are incredible, and it's a locally owned, family-owned, Jet fan-owned business as well. Tyson Alrad, the founder, diehard Jet fan. So if you support me, support Copper John's Beard. because you're supporting a Jet family-owned business. Jake20 at checkout, 20% off on your purchase of any of Copper John's beard products. All right, here we go. Comments, questions, super chats. We'll cut the line. Appreciate everyone tuned in. Please hit the like button and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Ray Danger starts us off. JD has to get back into the second to get us a wide receiver. Well, then he's going to have to trade down from 10. The way you get a receiver in the second round, I believe, is trading down from 10. I think the Jets maybe could package their third round pick and like a fourth round pick to get back into like the late second, maybe. But I wouldn't bank on that. The path to getting a receiver in round 2 is trading out of 10. You need a trade partner, though. GTA IV man writes in, all this talk about offensive line and receiver, but who's the backup questions? Look, I think the backup is one of 4 names. Jacoby Brissett, Gardner Minshew, Ryan Tannehill, or Tyrod Taylor. I think it's one of those 4 names. I hope it's Brissett. Obviously, they have significantly upgraded that backup quarterback with any of those names that I just mentioned. Any of them. Big Rush says, I'll take Boyd. He's one of the better third receivers in the NFL. You could do a lot worse than Tyler Boyd. I agree. I would take him too. Dimitri's got a super chat. He cuts the line. Hi, Jake. Would you like it if the Jets get one Taction free agent and Mowers at 20 as long as they get 2 tackles in free agency? Dimitri, I appreciate the super chat, but I'm not quite sure what you're saying. I'm going to try and interpret. Get one, I'm going to say tackle in free agency is what you're saying. And then Mowers, I'm assuming, is Bowers. As long as they get 2 tackles in free agency. Well, if you're getting Bowers at 20, you have to trade down. I don't think Bowers is going to make it to 20. He's too good of a prospect. I see no scenario. I don't see a scenario where Brock Bowers is on the board at 20 for any team, let alone the Jets. If they somehow got 2 tackles in free agency and traded down to 20, I would assume they got at least a second-round pick. So then you can go Bowers at 20. You could maybe take – honestly, you know what I would do if I traded down in that scenario? I would take Jackson Powers-Johnson. And I'd play him at center, and I'd move Tippmann to guard. That's the one guy I would do it for. Or maybe play, Jackson Powers-Johnson at guard and leave Tippmann at center because Rodgers maybe doesn't want a rookie center. And Tippmann has had a year in the offense already. And we know for a fact his preference is to stay at center, of course. Speaking of Tippmann, our first caller was just recently on vacation with him. Let's go to Neil. He starts us off today. What's up, Neil?
What's up, Jake? How you doing?
What's up, man?
Not much. I saw an NBC thing I sent you showing some of the likely free agents the Jets are going to pick up, and they mentioned Runyon at Green Bay as a cheap guard, maybe as a second lineman, to go along with Tyron Smith, which, look, we have to go out and get the best guy out there, and obviously Smith's the best guy. So let's start with that. I mean, I'm expecting to be super excited at the end of the first day of free agency. I want to have Tyron Smith. Let's get a Runyon. A couple of guys in the chat are mentioning, Hollywood Brown. The one thing about Hollywood Brown is, he could take the top off. He's got the speed that, he could take the top off a receiver. Let's not forget, look, everybody wants to just take Lazard and throw him away, okay? He had a really good success with Aaron Rodgers. I mean, he had 700 yards 2 years ago, 8 touchdowns. He's going to perform. In my opinion, I think he just took when Aaron Rodgers went down, he came to New York from Wisconsin. The guy supposedly likes to go to plays and all this other crap. So I just think he got an off year. I think that, hope now that he did as bad as he did, I'm hoping Aaron Rodgers could talk him into doing a restructure and free up some cap space so we could lower the temperature and let him prove himself again. And he's the big body guy that could do the contested catches. And then you got, Hollywood Brown to break it downfield because we don't have that type of weapon. and that gives us flexibility to move around with Aaron Rodgers. And I do believe there's going to be an Ayuk or some other surprise wide receiver that's going to come out here. And I mentioned Mike Williams to you yesterday. I like Mike Williams. I mean, if we're going to get a guy like that, I mean, there'll be a guy that we're going to get at receiver that's going to be real good. I think, I really like the A.J. Dillon thing. They mentioned that today in that article also, because, again, I want a big bruising back to go along with Brees, and I think somebody like that would do it. So just to sum it up, A.J. Dillon, they mentioned Tannehill. Again, if we don't get any of the big backups, he would be somebody that we can get cheap. He's going to know the system. He could come in for a few games. But let's face facts. Everybody's talking about Aaron Rodgers. Look, if Aaron Rodgers goes down like he did last year in a couple of games, Jake, this fan base, we may just have, I don't know what's going to happen. It's going to be, I can't imagine something like that happening. And I'm more optimistic it won't, simply because the expectations now have turned down so low. I mean, I cannot believe how bad our fan base has turned on this team, where in the media that, you would think we, like you said earlier, you think we were a 3-win team last year. I mean, we're not that bad. Everybody's like, and I really hope I know the free agents are going to want to come here. And, when you got Sauce Gardner and you got Aaron Rodgers talking up the team and let's go, and these are our guys are going to want to come here. And
13 points made. I know. You want me to shut up and jump out this window?
That was a great Neil call. And I'll say this. Neil's not wrong. He's not wrong. I know what Neil's reaction will be if Rodgers goes down again. We just watched it on the screen there. That's every Jet fan's reaction as well. This is actually every Jet fan's reaction if Aaron Rodgers were to get hurt and miss most of the season again.
These goddamn explosions.
I mean, that's what it would be like. Let's be real. Let's be real. Joining us right now is a man who is fashionably late, because when he's not on this show, he's running an empire. The co-founder of JetsXFactor.com, Robby Sabo, joins us now. Hello, Robby.
Yes, Jake, and Neil is correct. You know what's funny with Neil, what he said? I mean, it's true that the best seasons the Jets have had have come after off seasons of major doubt. I mean, you think about it, 2009, after the disaster of 2008.
Yep.
2004, they were down in 2003. So there's a pattern there. Even 2015, it was getting rid of Vidzik. So, I think 2024 should be good.
How about even like 2006, right? Playoff
year.
Yeah,
2006. Great example.
I mean, first year of Mangini. Honestly, first year of Parcells to go from a 1-win team to 9-7 should have made the playoffs that year. I think big picture, it's actually good that there's going to be less hype and hoopla around the Jets. I do think by the time we get to the year, Jet fans will convince themselves again, because you'll see Rodgers out there. They'll have some new additions. There'll be some excitement, and rightfully so. It won't be close to what we experienced last year, though. Nothing will.
No. And, I think if you poll Jets fans, the casuals will be down on the team because of the current narrative, but the diehards, I think, love it, honestly. It's, what Sean Payton said. What's Sean Payton last year when he said whoever wins the offseason usually does poor? That's correct. I think the Jets were a little bit of a anomaly in terms of that last year based on Rodgers and the things they did. They didn't go crazy in free agency. It was just Rodgers, and it was a lot of hype, a lot of built-in hype because of it. But
because the team was already good. That's the difference, right? Like,
they built
the Jets
it.
They already had a good team, and they had no quarterback, and then they added a 4-time MVP. It wasn't like they assembled the team all in one offseason. The team was in place. They were missing the most important position in sports. That was the difference.
Yeah, they built it. Unlike the aggressive rebuild of 2015 with McCagnon, where he did everything wrong. Unlike 2019 with Le'Veon and Mosley.
Yep.
This was legit. They built it already. They built the nucleus, added Aaron Rodgers. So I like the narrative. I'm with Neil.
Dimitri's got a super chat that we'll talk more about the wide receiver position, Robbie. He says, sorry for the autocorrect earlier. I meant, would you like it if the Jets signed one free agent wide receiver and draft Bowers at 10 as long as they signed 2 free agent tackles? You're going to have to tell me which tackles they are, Dimitri. If you tell me they signed like David Bakhtiari and George Fant, who have like an unbelievably long injury history, especially Bakhtiari, then I would say, no, you still need to go tackle at 10 over Brock Bowers. If you told me they signed, Jonah Williams, who's been incredibly durable, and they were able to sign Fant and, maybe someone else, or they signed like Michael Onwenu, where they were able to add like 2 notable guards in free agency. If they say AVT is our right tackle, then I'm more open to the idea of a Bowers at 10, or if somehow one of these great receivers is there. But for the most part, I'm at a point now where I'd be very surprised if I'm going to be sitting here, 50-something days from right now when the Jets are on the clock being like, yep, they're good. Take a non-tackle, I think that pick in a loaded tackle class needs to be used on a tackle.
I agree. And I'm seeing a lot of mocks, not a lot, but I'm seeing some mocks where they're going receiver at 10 for the Jets. And everyone gets surprised. Oh, receivers loaded this year. It's like this every year, folks, because football's different. It's different now. And if you look at the list, there are a lot of guys, in projected around round 2. Some of them, it's just natural. Some of them will slip to round 3. I mean, who do you want to talk about here? It will happen. We don't know who it's going to be, but some of them will slip. The problem is you don't get that taller prototype guy. They get gobbled up early, so that's an issue. I think right now I'm hot on Sutton right now. The idea of Sutton, what you have to give up is the question. I think in terms of being a Jets fan, if you have to give up a third for Sutton, straight up, I'm doing it in a heartbeat.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I think he's a perfect complement to what they have in Garrett Wilson and helping in the red zone. I just don't know if they're going to move him. I mean, he's a guy that I think people have mentioned like Garrett Bowles. They're more likely to move a receiver than they would be a left tackle, especially when they might have a rookie now in that spot.
Yeah, and well, here's the thing. That is cheap. Third for Sutton. It's unlikely on paper, but the best teams to target are those not in turmoil. Maybe they are in turmoil, Denver, but those that are rebuilding. We saw it with Marshall for a 5th once upon a time. So that's the target to me. And I like that idea the most. Got to go tackle at 10. You just have to. You have to. I don't care how deep the tackle class is. You have to. Latham's a guy I keep hearing of in terms of moving up the board. And if you think about it with Douglas, Latham is that prototype. Comparatively speaking, he's not Becton, but he's got the longer arms. In terms of prototype, what Douglas likes, he is comparatively speaking at the top, like Becton was a few years ago. So will he go Latham? Will Fashanu be there? There's a lot to sort out.
I'll give you a new name, by the way. Troy Fontenot. I like him.
Yep, he's climbing up too.
Fontanu.
I mean, between Fontenot or Fortanu and Fuaga and Fashanu, I'm going to have a nightmare the next 3 months. Jeez.
I know. He's a top 15 player on Connor Rogers' big board, and Connor's my guy. And then the way he tested, they were like, oh, he might be a guard. Now he's a tackle. He's athletic enough to play left tackle in the NFL.
Yeah, it is. It's interesting, man. And the more you look at it, the more a trade back makes the most logical sense.
Yep.
You trade back, 5-10 slots, whatever you have to, grab Latham or whoever you like under the radar, try to snag a 2nd round pick and then focus on receiver. And those receiver names, 2nd, 3rd round, I'm still going through them, but there's a lot of guys as per usual, every year. And I know Jets fans are going to hate that idea because of Denzel Mims and all the, bust 2nd rounders, but there are names. And if you get the right guy, you could be okay. The problem is you can't really rely on a 3rd round receiver. He's got to be, sprinkles on top of the cake. So what's going to happen before that in terms of weapons? I don't know.
If you have a question for Robby Sabo to answer, write it in. Super Chats will interrupt our show and go first. I also want to do something nice for everyone that's tuned in. If you want to become a Jake Asman Show channel member, you hit the join button on the left-hand side, but there's also a feature on YouTube where you could gift your fellow listeners channel membership. So right now, what I'm going to do, I'm going to give away 5 memberships to some random Jet fans that are tuned in watching the show live. So boom, we have made the announcement. The memberships have gone out. So shout out to everyone who just received 1 month of a free Jake Asman Show membership. Thank you all so much for supporting the show. That means we've now given away 20 memberships over the last 24 hours. So appreciate everyone for their support. If you want to become a Jake Asman Show channel member, get the emojis, get your questions more likely to be answered, all the other bonus shows that I put out there, and just things I'm not even going to announce publicly that you get when you're a channel member. Check it out. Shout out to everyone who's tuned in right now. All right, Robby.
Yep.
Let's go through some of the receiver options. Now, Calvin Ridley's probably the most notable name that is left. I'm assuming you're good with the Jets signing him. And then if you're on board with that, break it down for us, and then we'll kind of talk about the other options if they can't land Ridley.
Yeah, so I was in Miami this weekend, got in at 3 a.m. It's been a hell of a weekend. I heard about Evans, right? Suddenly, after he's going to test free agency, he's now going to return. Is that the latest report?
So Mike Evans is back to Tampa. He has re-signed.
Okay. And any other activity with the receivers that I missed? I don't think so, right? Pittman's likely to stay.
Yeah, he's going to get tagged, or they'll sign him to a deal. Higgins has already been franchise tagged. So, the top receivers, as expected, are not leaving their team. So Calvin Ridley is probably the most notable name that is on the market right now.
Yeah, Ridley, and then I'm hearing noise about Kendrick Bourne too, correct?
Kendrick Bourne, the Jets have interest in him if New England doesn't keep him. That was the report yesterday from the Boston Herald.
Okay, yeah, Bourne makes sense. Ridley makes the most sense at this point. I mean, I think I was on the show 2 weeks ago saying I'd like to avoid him if I can, but I'm okay with it if there are no other options. And at this point, you got to do it. If you can't land Sutton, Deontay Johnson is the other option, but I kind of want to stray from Deontay. There's some questions there that I don't like, and he's not the biggest guy, and I want a bigger receiver. I want to push Lazard down the depth chart as much as I can. You know, I love Xavier Gibson. Brownlee's a nice project. Garrett Wilson. So definitely Sutton is the first option, and I'm cool with trading because you could trade down because there's plenty of tackle depth. And then number 2, completely fine with Ridley.
John writes in, would we get anything for Tyler Conklin? After cutting Uzama, you're not trading Conklin. In fact,
No.
I would extend Conklin now. Will Parkinson brought this up on his podcast. I'd give Conklin 2 years, $20 million. I'd offer it to him right now. Get him locked in on a team-friendly deal. He's got a year left on his deal. You can lower his cap number for this year. He's a really productive player, good locker room guy, close relationship with the quarterback. I would keep Conklin, not trade him. Him and Jeremy Rucker's the best tight end duo the Jets are going to have out there on a field with a real quarterback in years.
Yeah, and they contrast nicely. I mean, Conklin's the receiving option. He's not a burner. He's not a crazy vertical threat guy, but he's a nice possession guy who's got some nice hands and it runs smart routes. And Rucker, while he can do those things and he could grow into that, he brings the blocking aspect. He could play H-back. He could do whatever you need. I mean, he could even play some fullback if they don't keep Bowden. So I like those two together.
Let's get to some other wide receiver options, Robby. So here is the wide receivers that are available as of right now. You see that obviously the big 3 up top: Higgins, Evans, Pittman.
Yep.
Not available. Pittman is going to be tagged or extended, so ignore his status. Hollywood Brown is interesting to me because Sean Jefferson coached him in that room in 2022 with the Cardinals. He's now the Jets wide receivers coach.
Yep.
I think his input should carry a lot of weight whether or not the Jets would pursue Hollywood Brown.
Yeah, Hollywood Brown's interesting. Again, he's not that perfect fit, but he's not the perfect fit in terms of size. But what he does in terms of stretching the field is a need that they need. So Hollywood Brown makes a lot of sense, and I haven't really given too much thought about it, but that's something that's going to be cooking in my brain.
Other names to watch that I personally like: Tyler Boyd. I think he's criminally underrated. I don't think he's a true number 3. I think he's had to be a number 3 because he plays with Mark Chase and Higgins. Yeah. And then I also like Josh Reynolds. He had a really good postseason with the Lions. I think he's underrated. So Josh Reynolds would be a guy that I like. The one name on this list that I want nothing to do with is Gabe Davis. And actually, So there's 2. Gabe Davis, no
Michael
thank
Thomas.
you. Michael Thomas is never healthy. And then Odell is just a name at this point. He's not the same player.
Oh, God. Again, his last Pro Bowl was during the Obama administration. Stop it. No OBJ, no Michael Thomas. Couldn't agree more.
By the way, Noah Brown, no thank you. I don't know if
No.
Jet fans are familiar with Noah Brown on the Texans. I'm good on him. Curtis Samuel's a name I like too, Robbie. I think he's like an efficient receiver that would kind of fit the West Coast offense. He's a good route runner.
Yeah, Samuel, he brings a lot of versatility. And can he stretch the field as much as he used to? Probably not, but he could still fill that role to a certain degree. And then Darnell Mooney. How about Darnell Mooney? I mean, he's 5'11". He's not the biggest guy. He's shown flashes. I can't expect any receiver to tear it up in that Bears offense, what they've had in terms of a scrambling quarterback for what's he been with Fields now? 3 years. So Darnell Mooney's kind of intriguing to me as well.
Comments, questions, super chats for Robbie. We'll take some calls as well. One of the perks of being a Jake Asman Show channel member is just for $5 a month, you get a free super chat every single month. So Jets Carpetbagger has been a member for 4 months, writes in, Saquon Barkley is a free agent. Should the Jets pick him up to complement Brees? No chance are the Jets spending $10+ million or even anywhere near like $7 or $8 million on a running back. And look, when I love Barkley, sure, it's not. This is not fantasy football, though. They're not going to make that investment when you already have a superstar in Brees Hall.
Yeah, no chance. I mean, usually, I'm very liberal with guys like, okay, like Bakhtiari. If you could sign him to a cheap deal, I very rarely rule something out. Barkley, I rule it out entirely. Him, OBJ, Michael Thomas is just wasted money. I wouldn't even spend $1 million or $2 million on it.
Brandon, who just became a channel member because I gave him a membership. We're quickly running out of options. The Hardman situation was not a good look when trying to recruit free agents. I disagree. You know what gets free agents, Robbie? Cash. And you know what will help get free agents? Aaron Rodgers. And also, like, I think the way the Jets came out and pushed back on Hardman is a sign of a united team. I like that. You know what I think helps get free agents? When guys like Sauce Gardner come out and are the face of your franchise. Rodgers, obviously everything that Garrett Wilson has said, like Brees, like that to me helps you get free agents. Hardman comes across like a very disgruntled, sour grapes employee. Like, I don't think it was a good look for Mecole Hardman, especially when it came out that the Jets are like, well, bro, you're leaking our game plan. Shut up.
Yeah. So I was going to write a feature last week, just ran out of time, titled Attention Jets, No More Mr. Nice Guy. Jamal Adams, so many situations that have come across their table, Douglas and Saleh, they've been the nice guy. They've done everything to cater to the player. They've done everything above and beyond some other regimes would do. And that's okay when you're building a program. But at this point, you cannot get shoved around anymore. I think the PR team is being a little stiffer in terms of, public perception and things that get dumped on them. And, for a team that was 7-10, playing with the worst quarterback play in the world, you'd think they'd be 1-16 last season based on the narrative right now. And I know some of it comes with being in New York, having Aaron Rodgers, the narratives and headlines that he creates, but doing everything you can to not be Mr. Nice Guy from this point forward, I think is appealing. It'll turn some guys off, but the guys it turns off, I don't want those guys in the building. So put your heel in the ground and keep pushing back. The Mecole Hardman stuff, it's going to hurt him in the end more than anybody else, and it's not even close.
Yep. Super chat from Jetpack. Pick 2, Corbett, Coles, Cotchery, Moss, Edwards, Holmes. Well, Robbie, you do a podcast with Corbett, so I feel like he has to be one of your picks.
Well, we're doing one tonight at 7, by the way. Tune in. The long-awaited return after my ear infection. And it just, by the way, didn't I call it at the beginning when we started this once-a-week thing? If I ever missed a date, it's on me 9 times out of 10, not Jake. And that held true today. Pick number 2. What was the question again?
I guess just pick 2. Are we saying is the question our personal favorites, or is it just who are the best players here?
Corbett, Coles, Moss, and who else? Cotchery?
Edwards, Holmes.
Ooh. I'll go Corbett. You got to go Corbett. In terms of a Jet, he just embodies so much of what the fans love. So I'll go Corbett and Holmes for the big play factor on the other side.
I'm just going to break it down by who's been a guest on the show. I'm going Holmes, and I'm going Braylon.
I got to tell Wayne, he's got to get his ass on the show because
I know
he's losing points here.
I mean, Wayne's got to join, man. We got we've had some big names on the show, and I would love to put a little Wayne Corbett on the program here.
We're gonna make it happen.
If we're doing all-time Jets, Corbett's got to be on there. I think one of the most underrated players in Jets history is Jericho Cotchery. He is
Yes.
a stud. That guy is the consummate professional. He made so many big catches. He played unbelievably well in the postseason. And I just saw, I forget which school it is. It might have been, I'm going to look it up. But Jericho Cotchery was just named a head coach at whatever college
Was
football
he
program
really?
he was coaching at. Yeah. So I'm
Nice.
happy for Cotchery. But yeah, Cotchery, he's someone I'd love to get on the show. He was just named the head coach at Limestone University. So good for Jericho. Maybe one day he'll be the coach of the Jets.
No, yeah, 2004, 2005. Kadri was there. Yeah, I forgot what round he was picked in. Mid-round, one of the mid-rounds. I didn't expect much from him. I don't know why. When I was younger, watching the team, and then suddenly Mangini had him number 2 on the depth chart in 2006, and I'm sitting there like, whoa, where did this come from? And I like that. It signaled Mangini was not, no more Mr. Nice Guy. He was stern. And to connect it to this offseason, Laken Tomlinson cut, Uzama cut, the Jets are not messing around. And that's what I'd like to see.
Yeah, Cotchery, just unbelievable player, man.
Willing blocker, too. Great blocker,
Yeah.
Great leader.
The greatest play in Cotchery's Jet career is either the long running catch in the playoff win against the Patriots or the play in overtime against the Browns where he, I forget the injury, but he critically injured himself. He couldn't move, and he still was hobbling around on the field and caught a huge third down conversion from Sanchez to help the Jets eventually win that game on the Holmes touchdown to win. Cotchery was a gamer, man. That guy was a stud.
It's funny. The Jets' history, there are weak positions like safety. Receiver is kind of strong. And when you rank it, you got Maynard number 1 for sure. I think you got to put Wesley Walker number 2. And then 3 and 4, to me, is a battle between Toon and Corbett. And, skills-wise, Toon was so much better. And even Corbett has admitted that. But historically speaking, stats, what they did for their entire career, it's a tough call between those two. And then after that, you got guys like Coles, Cotchery, Keyshawn even, get some votes, Antonio. So there's a lot of names.
I'll say it, and I said it last year. If Garrett Wilson plays his entire career with the Jets, he'll go down as the best receiver they've ever had. And I understand Maynard's in the Hall of Fame, but that's how special Garrett Wilson is.
He easily could. And he has a chance. If he plays his entire career here, he has a chance to surpass all the stats that Maynard put up. Even though Maynard has tremendous stats, especially for his era, Garrett Wilson could squash that.
It's funny. If Brandon Marshall played his whole career as the Jets, he'd be their number 1. I mean, he has the best single-season Jet receiver season ever.
Yeah, he's got the yards. He's got the receptions. I think he's tied for touchdowns single season. 14, I think, with Powell and another person. I forgot to.
That 2015 Marshall season is just unbelievable.
Absurd. It was absurd. And when you're looking back, their schedule was cupcake. They got a lot of breaks, but they had talent on the team. They really did.
Super chat from Mike, who writes in, AVT left guard, Tippmann center, sign Robert Hunt to right guard for $13.5 million a year. That's a lot of money for a guard. Owenyu, right tackle, $16.5 million a year. Draft Fashanu at left tackle. Draft/trade wide receiver in rounds 3/4 with Corley, Burton, Rice, Wilson, Adams next year. Mike, I don't hate your mock off season. That's a lot of money though to spend on a right guard. I don't know if they would do that. Owenyu at right tackle, yeah, I think they need to sign at least one tackle. So if it's Owenyu, I'm good with it. And then I do think pick 10. I think Olu Fashanu is going to make it to 10, Robbie. That's my new thing.
Yeah.
If he's there, I would take him if I'm the Jets.
I do too, and I think he's the front runner. Shout out to Joe Blewett. Me and him had a conversation earlier this morning in terms of guard, tackle, the money. I agree with you. That's a lot of money for guard. However, things are starting to change in the NFL where GMs are looking to build the interior of the line first because it's tougher to get tackles, number 1. But number 2, you could scheme against edge players in the NFL today, especially if you have a mobile quarterback, and the Jets don't. Rodgers could move a little. He's older. You want him sitting in the pocket, but his smarts, you could scheme around dominant edge players like a Bosa. I mean, it's not easy, but you could do that much more so and control them as opposed to D tackles like a Quinnen or a Donald. And it's just the nature of the game. Jet motion, trying to go east-west, putting pressure points on those edge players. So I think, and look at the Chiefs, dominant interior. Their tackles are a little average, below average, yet they're fine. Why? Mahomes and Reed. And you scheme your way around those dominant edge guys. So while I agree with you on paper, that that mindset is starting to change a little bit. Does Douglas go that route? I doubt it, not fully, but how much is he thinking that is the question.
I would sign Dotson from the Rams if I'm going to spend that kind of money because that guy is top 10 at his position. He's like 26 or 27, like similar scheme.
Yeah.
Like I'd look at him if I'm going to spend that kind of money on a guard, which I do think is possible because it's a much better guard class than it is a tackle class. By the way, we were talking about Braylon Edwards. I'd be remiss if I didn't mention the fact that he rescued an 80-year-old man who was being insulted inside a locker room at a YMCA in Michigan the other day. It was all over the news. So shout out to Braylon Edwards for not just being a great Jet, great football player, but a hero, a great man, a great person.
Yeah, and speaking of Pats touchdowns, that slant, what was it, the second touchdown against the Pats? Oh, my God.
Bully ball.
Never has a Jets receiver crossed the goal line with such enthusiasm and aggressiveness than Braylon did that day. That was incredible.
Oh, my God. It was like representing like every Jet fan, just sticking it to New England for that one day. Oh,
And
that
the
was the
juices
best.
were flowing.
The best. Absolute best. Let's get back to your calls, shall we? Open phone lines, Gustbuster hotline if you want in. Let's go to Bijan, who joins us now. Bijan, what's going on?
Hey guys, how's it going?
What's up,
What's up,
Bijan?
Hey, just had a idea I was thinking about with the Jets, especially with the Mike Evans news recently. I don't know how realistic this is, but we've been talking a lot about trading back one or two slots, getting that extra second or third round pick. So at least starting from there, then getting a right tackle, and then potentially, I know Connor Rogers mentioned this. I don't know if it was on your show, Jake, or another show, but also taking those 2 fourths this year, a 2025 second, and then also moving into the second round of this year. So you're getting like maybe, I don't know, just a bunch of picks as much as possible. And the reason I say that is because you're looking at like 2025. Everybody's talking about how the wide receiver class isn't as good, the quarterback class isn't as good. The whole Aaron Rodgers all-in type thing that we've been talking about, and just a lack of options now at receiver. Now that Evans is gone, Pittman's going to get tagged, Higgins is tagged, and I don't know if I feel comfortable spending that kind of crazy money unless it's like a 1-year deal on a Marquise Brown, a Josh Reynolds, because these guys have been kind of hit or miss. I was wondering what you guys thought about that potentially.
Thanks for the call, Bijan.
Yeah, I'm okay with front loading the assets for this year to a point. I'm not selling out totally, but the luxury the Jets have when you need a receiver is it's loaded every year. Right now, you said it doesn't look as good next year. That could be true, but that's the way it always goes.
Every year we say, "Oh, next year's class is not as good as this year." Like I saw someone put together a bunch of tweets about the quarterbacks being like, "Next year's quarterback class not as good." And then here we are. There's going to be at least 4 guys that go in the top 15.
Breaks out all the time, changes during the year, and the luxury they have is they can play it. I don't expect them to do anything prematurely. They're going to wait until draft day because they could play it out in real time in the second round. When you look at these names, Brendan Rice, Devontae Walker, even McMillan, there's a lot of guys. Roman Wilson, I don't know, he's gonna fly off the board too early. But Luke McCaffrey, he's not a game breaker. Maybe they like the pedigree. Thrash, there's a lot of names, and at least a couple of them are going to drop to the Jets in the third round.
Yep. Always seems to happen. There's no doubt about that. Comments, questions for Robby Sabo. Matthew wants to know, which is a better soundbite, Bart Scott's can't wait rant or Rex Ryan's goddamn snack? Well, Rex's snack is funnier. The can't wait rant is more iconic in Jet history, so I'll go with that one.
I agree with you completely. What Rex has that Bart Scott's is the most iconic for sure, but what Rex has is the background, the faces of the players in the background. Nick Folk, I remember his face. He was trying to hold himself back from laughing so hard, and he had a little grin, a little smile on his face. That was the tops with the Rex thing.
Gator with an interesting question for us. Years from now, who do you think could be looked at from this existing staff as our Yankees-like core 4? Well, I think it's obviously Sauce and Garrett and probably Jermaine. Brace is tricky because he's a running back, so they just don't have as long of a shelf life in today's NFL as those other guys. Quinnen should count, but Quinnen's Quinnen had 4 years in the league before those guys were drafted already. So it's
Quinnen's
like
going to be like Bernie, where they left.
Yeah.
See, the Yankees core 4 thing is so ridiculous because Bernie, to me, was so important to that team.
Good comp. Bernie is exactly what Quinnen would be if we're going to play this game.
Yeah, and so if Quinnen is the 5th guy, Bernie, then you got Sauce, Garrett, hopefully ABT. ABT's, for it to work, ABT has to stay healthy and be one of the 4. And then I think, Jermaine, I would say, right?
Dave says, Robbie, how good is Brendan Rice? Friend of the show, Brendan Rice. I like Brendan Rice.
Did you have him on?
I had him on at Radio Row at the Super Bowl last month.
Nice. Yeah, I mean, listen, it's good college for receivers, obviously. He's the prototype you want. 6'3", 210. I didn't catch his 40. Did he run the 40 at the combine?
I don't know. I don't know if he did. I don't remember. He probably did.
He for the later guys, the mid-round receiver guys, he's that prototype that I'd want for sure. He ran a 4.5.
He wants to be a Jet too. He made that very clear to me when I was talking with him. He'd love to be in New York.
Nice. And notice how many guys. Listen, and people say this about every team. It's the industry standard line. Yeah, I'd love to play with this team. Yeah, I'd love to play with this. But when it's Aaron Rodgers, there's that little extra oomph that you could notice and see. And that's apparent. And that's something that fans should definitely take note of.
Shadow Realm says, new uniforms only 6 weeks away. Wow.
It was necessary, man. Listen, some people, you see the comments on Twitter, oh, just win. I don't care if they play in pink uniforms. Folks, the uniforms do matter. Are they the end-all be-all? No, but they matter because identity matters in football. It matters in the NFL that you feel good, that there are no negative thoughts and feelings about anything, whether it's the locker room, your teammates, just different procedures in the building. Those NFLPA reports came out. I'm sure you touched on that big time. The Super Bowl champs got bad grades in a lot of areas, but it matters. And having that identity, I think it's a very important thing for the Jets.
Look good, feel good, baby.
Yep.
Look at Aaron Rodgers in our new uniforms.
Yeah, dude. It's listen, is it official? They're going to go black for sure.
Well, they're going to have a black one, but no one knows what it actually looks like. I tried to do some digging at the combine, but I couldn't get any answers that I feel comfortable sharing.
Yeah, I wouldn't mind a black uniform. The question is, should they keep the green helmets with the black uniform like they had it a couple of years ago, or go with black helmets? They'll probably go with black helmets.
Yeah, I think if you're doing black, it should be all black.
Yeah, you got to do that.
I am so pumped about the logo, though. I mean, that's
dude, it is. And what's funny? That logo would have made the current modern uniforms for the past 5 years that much better. I feel like it was a sharper jersey that needed that 80s logo, but they just botched it with the rounded logo and went with the sharper jersey. It was just a horrible look all the way around.
Patricia says Jets will have the first pick in 2025. Goodbye.
Ooh.
I am Jesus Christ, his son. You are my chosen disciples. Put on your war faces, gentlemen. Let's go and make the greatest war movie ever. Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
Oh.
Yeah. New stupid town. Man. I'll tell you what. The Jets might be bad next year, Robbie, but they're not going to be first pick in the draft bad. You want to know why? Because we never get the first pick of the draft. We don't know how to tank properly. They'll win 2 of their last 3 games like they always seem to when they're in position to get the top pick, and it won't happen.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, and if an alien dropped on Earth today and it was a huge football fan, again, the narrative around this team right now, you'd think they won 1 game or 2 games last year. It's not the case. Going 7-10 with the worst quarterback play in the world and all the so-called dysfunction in quotes, it's a promising sign to me.
Nick says, is there still time to franchise tag players? The deadline is today. So today's the last day you can put the tag on a player. It's at 4 p.m. Eastern. So you'll have your answers there.
And I would have been shocked if they tagged Huff. It just we talked about it. I mean, people mention tag and trade. That's very difficult. I mean, you could do that if you could have a willing taker, but it's very difficult to find a team in that situation. So, any Huff tag would have been shocking to me.
Jets X Factor royalty is watching the show. The great Rivka Bullard writes in, I normally don't care about uniforms, but the legacy ones are sweet. So glad they're making them the unis. It's a no-brainer. Like, the Jets can't even screw this up. It's just they're too nice.
The difference between those and the others, it literally, usually it's not to such a stark degree, but even to me, it was, man, you'd really get low when you realize they weren't wearing the legacies last year. And that's a big look at Parcells. What did he do? He went back to the classic uniforms in 98. One season with the 80s uniforms, which are fine, of course, but he understands identity matters. It's important. And I remember in 98, week 1 in San Francisco when, who was it, Garrison Hurst ran over the entire team to win it.
Yep.
I remember Steve Mariucci before the game had a quote, man, look at these Jets unis, the old Namath unis. Now these look like the Jets. And that quote sticks in my head. It matters. It really does.
Look good, feel good, baby. I truly believe that. AJ says, has Lawson been released yet? Lawson is a free agent. His contract voided. So
Yeah.
he's gone. He will
Yep.
not be a Jet. This one is from John, who says, which team in the top 10 is most likely to trade down? New England needs the most pieces. Wouldn't it make sense for them to drop down for more picks? It would, John, but you either have a quarterback or you don't. They don't have a quarterback, and I think ownership is going to want them to take a quarterback. That's just what you do. Like, in theory, yeah, you trade down this and that. I would be shocked if they didn't take a quarterback. That's like, you could have the greatest roster in the world. If you have no quarterback, you don't have a shot. Look at Pittsburgh. Look how good they've been, but they're not going to win because of their quarterback situation. You need a quarterback. If you believe in one of these guys as franchise quarterbacks, you're not passing on them to get picks that might end up turning into something. You have no idea.
Yeah, agreed. And they're in a tough spot. Of all the teams, they're in a tough spot right now because, I like Jaden Daniels so much more than May. So what do? I mean, and Harrison's just staring right at you in your face, and he's the best player in the draft. So they're in a tough spot. But yeah, quarterback is the conventional thought right now.
If you want a team that's going to trade out in the top 5, the Chargers would make sense because they have their quarterback in place. It's they have a decent foundation. I'm not saying they don't have holes, but I could see Harbaugh being like, we need a bunch of things. We don't need a quarterback. Depending on what they did with Mike Williams and Keenan Allen, they don't necessarily need to take Neighbors or Dunze there. I could see them trading down, getting more picks, and they're a sneaky Brock Bowers team to watch. I think the Chargers would trade out of 5 if they got the right offer.
Yeah, I agree. Arizona, no. They're in the best spot right now. Giants, no. Tennessee, unlikely.
Giants can trade up. Giants could be a team that would trade up a spot just to guarantee they get their quarterback so a team behind them doesn't do it.
Yeah.
Like Denver or Vegas, if they wanted to move up.
Yeah, Giants are in a tricky spot too now that I think about it because you can get one of the 3 stud receivers, but I think there's a huge drop-off between Neighbors and Odunze. Even though I like Odunze, Neighbors is just legit. Chicago. What about Chicago? They could easily trade down too at a 9.
Chicago's a prime team that will trade down for the team that's coming into the top 10 to get the 4th quarterback off the board, probably McCarthy.
Yeah. And it happens right before the Jets. And quarterback, no problem. Tackle, unlikely to happen based on how deep it is.
John writes in, Broncos or Las Vegas come up to 10 for JJ, we get a 2nd rounder. Possibly. JJ might go before 10, though. That's the thing. There's a lot of hype around him right now.
Yeah, the Jets, and it's crazy to say this, they are in such a great position. They need their tackle and receiver needy. Receivers always deep. Tackle is unusually deep this year, so they have a lot of options. And you call up a quarterback hungry team and see what you could do trading down.
Robbie, let me ask you something. Would you ever want to shoot a compound bow with Aaron Rodgers?
What the hell's a compound bow? Like hunting?
That's what it looks like he's doing here.
Hold on. I switched off for a second. No, let's not do that. And let's, as long as the ayahuasca and all other plant-based stuff is gone, maybe, but I doubt it. When did he release this? What's this, on social media somewhere?
Yeah, he I forget the guy's name. He did a podcast appearance on a popular show that is definitely not in my wheelhouse of demographic. But
Rogan?
No, it wasn't Rogan. It's a friend of Rogan though. The guy's been on Rogan. I don't know the guy's name.
Yeah, interesting. We can go to Vegas. We could do a bunch of different activities, but no compound bows.
Not a compound bow guy, huh?
No. Let's keep those at home.
Interesting. I would do it. for the record. By the way, Roger's rocking a Huga House hat. You can too. Promo code Asman to get the same hat Aaron is wearing at checkout for 15% off. Shout out to Huga House for having awesome vintage-inspired hats. A couple more for Robby before we wrap up. Let me ask you this. Watching the Combine, what other takeaways did you have? What are some of the other things that really stood out to you from last week in Indy?
Not much. I'm not one of these guys that puts a lot of stock into the Combine. It's, as Corbett has said many times, there's a difference between, track running and football running. So track speed and football speed. Yeah, the Xavier Worthy stuff was incredible. You always love when records are broken, but not much. Tackles pretty much panned out the way I thought they would. I'm still surprised how much NFL execs value 40 time with the tackles. I understand you want agile, you want zone blocking prototypes, and the Jets definitely do too, especially at tackle, but I like the short stuff a lot more. Joe Alt cemented to me, he's still the first tackle. He's got the bloodline. After that, it's still a toss-up for me between Fashanu, Fuantu, who I'll never pronounce his name right, Fuaga, and Latham. Latham is the guy, I think. Latham is the guy that's rising. And I think if the Jets really like him, the trade down is the way to go.
MC, who became a channel member mid-show. Foley Fatakasi was released. I'd bring Foley back on a one-year deal. He fits the need they have without Woods. Probably retiring / not going to be ready for the season anyway with the Achilles.
Yeah, Foley's a 3-4 guy, so he's used to the 3-4 mostly, and that's pretty much why the Jets moved on. But it doesn't mean he can't play in the 4-3. He absolutely can, and they need a one-tech guy to replace Al Woods. So I'd bring back Foley for sure. It wouldn't cost too much. He's a good team guy, and I think it's a good note right there.
Gary writes in, I met Jericho Kachi's wife at Lids at the Roosevelt Field Mall. She let it be known that she was the wife of Jericho Kachi of the NFL.
Yeah. Hey,
well, I'm happy for Jericho Kachi's wife, I suppose.
Yeah, hey, if you got a megaphone, use it.
Speaking of the Roosevelt Field Mall, that is where I met the following Jets in August of 2008 after I got back from summer camp at Camp Canadensis. I was out to dinner with my dad and my brother. We went to Houston's, which is right next to the Roosevelt Field Mall, back when Houston's was still a thing. And at the bar were the following Jet players: David Harris, Damian Woody, Chris Jenkins, and there was one more. I'm trying to remember the other player. But anyway, I met all those guys. David Harris could not have been nicer, and they all signed a napkin for me from Houston's on Long Island that I still have at my parents' place, which is sweet.
It's funny. So you were a young lad. How old were you? 14, 12 at that time?
You're going to make me do math, which is a struggle. I was in my teenager years.
Nice. So young Jake watching the big boys eat. It's funny. David Harris, he was very, he wasn't a overly vocal guy. He was a leader of the defense for sure, called the plays.
He was going into his second year, so he was still young. Like the leaders of the team then were still like Jenkins on defense. Like Revis was still coming into his own even. Like it was right after they got Favre too. Like the Jets were the talk of the NFL already. Yeah,
but the middle linebackers the Jets have had, Mosley, Harris, a lot of softer spoken guys who lead by example rather than vocal, opposite of Bart Scott, obviously. But, middle linebackers, true middle linebackers, Harris and Mosley. It's an interesting thought. They're not so over the top.
Interesting question here from Dan, who says, what about trading for Terry McLaurin? See, that's a creative name that no one's talking about. The Commanders have new ownership, new GM, going quarterback. Maybe they're starting a rebuild. It wouldn't shock me if that's like an option in a possible trade. I haven't heard anything of that. They might want to just keep him. He's a really good player. But, like, that's the type of name that, like, if he got traded, it'd be like, oh, that's this year's surprise. There's going to be someone we're not thinking of that gets traded. It happens every year. Yeah. Maybe he's that guy. I don't know his contract situation, though.
100%. I take McLaurin over Deontay Johnson in a heartbeat. I think I'm still going Sutton first based on the prototype. But again, it depends on the assets you have to give up. But yeah, good call. Good call. Washington is that prime example of maybe snatching away a vet receiver.
Yeah. Has he been paid already, McLaurin?
I know he's older for his draft age.
He's 28.
5 years now he's been in the league, and he's already 28. So he was a little bit older.
Let's see. He agreed to a 3-year deal in June of 2022. So let's
Last
see.
year.
So let's see. He's got this year at around $15 million as the base salary. His cap hit's $24 million. There's an out after this year with after the 2024 season with only $11 million in dead cap. Yeah,
Yep.
I don't know what Washington's plan is, but he could be a guy that maybe they could move. But at the same time, if you're the Commanders and you like the player and you're going to draft a quarterback, why would you get rid of one of his best weapons?
Right. He's definitely easily movable. So good call out. Whoever commented there, that's the comment of the day right there.
But once again, I'd be wary of like the Commanders trading away, their stud receiver when they're going to have a rookie who's going to need help. But we'll see. Crazy things happen.
Mm-hmm.
Dan writes in, inject Aaron Rodgers 500 yards and 5 touchdown performance against the Pats next season.
I mean, if there's a team to do it against, that's the team right there.
Oh my God.
I think the Pats are going to be. I think they're going to be a disaster. Nothing against Jared Mayo, but I just think they're going to be in for late 80s, early 90s Pats when there was relocation talk. I think that's their future for the next 5-8 years.
Jets Carpetbagger says maybe the Jets trade Zach to the Commanders for his old roommate Dax Milan.
Oh,
funny.
That's a hell of an offseason narrative right there.
Wild Wave says, love Vilma. Shame he couldn't play the 3-4. They never should have traded Jonathan Vilma. You adapt your scheme for your best players. Mangini shouldn't have gotten rid of Vilma.
That was a crazy Vilma. People forget how hot Vilma was in Jets land. He was such a great rookie. Did he get hurt the second year? I remember he got hurt a little bit. And then, when they switched to the 4-3, from the 4-3 to the 3-4 from Herm to Mangini, he just didn't fit. I forget what they got back from already. It's been so long.
Andy Worrell says, Robbie, a healthy Chris Jenkins or Sione Puha?
Give me Puha. Oh, a healthy Chris Jenkins?
If you give me 2008 Chris Jenkins.
You got to give me Chris Jenkins. If you can guarantee health, give me Chris Jenkins.
I mean, Sione Puha is unbelievable. He was such an underrated Jet.
Pound for pound, based on their entire career, including injury, I'm taking Puha. And I've done all-time Jets rosters in the past where Puha made the list. He was like the 50 tackle on the team. So it was between him and Ferguson of the Parcells years.
We have a Derek Jeter hater in the comments. I will not stand for this from Gary. Jeter was never the best player on his own team. Bernie than A-Rod was, but never Jeter. That's just objectively not true. There have been several seasons where Jeter was clearly the Yankees' best offensive player. Like, I can name them. 99, 2006. Like, I can keep going, but it's a waste of time. Like, why are we diminishing Derek Jeter? The guy. There are 5 baseball players in the history of the sport that have more hits than Derek Jeter. That's it. Only 5. He's one of the greatest players of all time. I'm upset.
He played during the steroid era, so the short-sighted folk will point to home runs. And it's like basketball, like the Carmelo Anthony. I think Carmelo Anthony's vastly overrated in terms of NBA history. They point to his points. They don't look at field goal percentage. They don't look at important efficiency stats. And that's the same thing with Jeter. And I have a lot of experience in this column because my dad is a infamous Yankee hater and hates Jeter, hates the Yankees. And it's funny, when he vowed to start hating the Yankees after Buck got fired by George, they rattled off 4 World Series in 5 years. So I'm like, hey, Dad, keep hating him because you're doing great. And Jeter is one of the all-time greats. Was he ever the best player on the team? Yes, he was. Home runs are not everything, just like points per game are not everything in the NBA.
Yeah, I mean, Derek Jeter's also a winner. Like, he was clutch. Who would you want up in a big spot with the game on the line? Derek Jeter or A-Rod? Next.
Jeter, easily, and that matters. Yeah. The clutch hitting is a big thing. People try to dismiss it. You can't dismiss it. It is. Situational play is huge.
Let's see. King Lowski says, are we getting Tyron Smith or not? I mean, they're going to be in on him. Are they going to pay him? Maybe.
What do you feel, Jake? Are you all in on Tyron Smith for the actual market value?
I would sign him if I had to pick any of the guys because at least I know I'm getting a top 5 tackle when he plays. I get it. He's not going to make it through 17 games. You're going to have to be prepared for that, but he's never missed a playoff game. And ultimately, like, if I'm going to spend big in free agency, at least I know I'm getting a guy who is still absolutely elite when he's out there.
I'm on the fence with this one. I don't know. I admittedly am unsure right now. I think it comes down to availability, who's still out there. Jonah Williams. So if I'm forced to pay Jonah Williams or Tyron Smith the same money, I'm going Tyron Smith. As much as Jonah's availability is appealing, I'm going Tyron Smith. So it depends who else is out there.
He's just Jonah Williams is not as good of a player as Tyron Smith.
Not even
he's
close.
More durable. I'll take him. He's young, but like
not even close.
Give Tyron Smith the Dwayne Brown deal and call it a day.
Yeah, you're right. Not even close. Hey, listen, I'll overpay for Tyron Smith as long as it's a short-term deal, and it should be based on his age.
Darren says Brunson is done. Darren, Brunson is a game-time decision for tonight. He has a knee
Yeah,
injury.
you know what? So I was at Miami Airport the flight was continuously getting delayed. I happened to look up at the screen and I saw Brunson down right away, and I couldn't believe it. I thought it was drunk or just tired from the delayed flights. I haven't heard any news since. He's fine. He's questionable for tonight.
He's questionable. Yeah, I mean, I would keep him out so we could get like a full 5 days off in between this injury, but he's not done. And the only thing, and a comment like that, you know what needs to be done, folks?
Yes.
Please welcome Darren to the Shadow Realm.
Into the Shadow Realm you go.
Aaron Rodgers is not that guy. Overhyped, overrated.
Couple minutes left with Robby.
Hey, by the way, I'm going to the Knicks game Sunday.
Are you? Who are they playing?
With my niece, a birthday party group tickets. So sit him out tonight, please. Thibodeau, sit him out tonight.
But they should be able to beat the Trae Youngless Hawks without Brunson. But we'll see.
Yeah, please.
Should the Jets trade 10 to Denver for 12 and a second for J.J. McCarthy? If he's still on the board, would Denver do it? I'm going to have to look this up. I don't think Denver has a second-round pick because of the Russ deal. Or maybe the Sean Payton trade, actually, which is hilarious. Let me check. Denver does not have a second-round pick, so that trade cannot happen. Would I do it for a third, though? Would I move from 10 to 12 and get Denver's third-rounder, which is pick 76, and then if I'm the Jets, I could package 76 and 72 to get back into round 2, maybe, and I still have 2 fourths? I would maybe consider that. That's an option.
I would too, because again, the tackle situation is ripe for that for sure.
You're still getting one of the tackles you have graded high in that scenario, so I like it.
Yeah, they're in a good spot. Got to look at the point value chart. I know people don't value it as much as they used to, but that's interesting. How much would it cost just to move down 2 spots?
That's the question that we need the answer to. Let's see. Any other final questions for Robby Sabo to answer? So you got the podcast tonight with Corbett. And what's the latest with Jets X Factor? You guys have released the offseason simulator, which is a huge, huge thing.
Yeah. Offseason simulator's out. Second version's coming soon. We got to clean up a few things. Like, you could still get Evans, but obviously because he's going to stay, most likely, just refrain from trying to sign him in the simulator. So second version's coming out soon. The updated Jets X Factor site is coming out within the next 2 weeks. That's going to be a big thing. And then Corbett tonight at 7 on YouTube.
The great number 80, Wayne Corbett.
Garfield Zone.
We love him. The great Wayne Corbett. Robby, this was a lot of fun, man. Appreciate you joining us. By the way, ear infection all taken care of. We're healthy again. I know it's been 2 weeks.
It's finally off antibiotics. It's been doing an adult ear infection. My God, I don't know if there's anything worse. First ear infection I can remember ever having, even as a kid. I don't remember one. So it's all good, ready to roll. And geez, what do we got? Three more months till the draft. But hey, March is coming. Or March is here. Shoot. League New Year's here. We'll see what free agency brings.
Oh, man. It's happening. Things are happening.
Let's go. Get these Jets fans excited.
I can't wait. Speaking of things that will get Jet fans excited, great interview coming up today at 4 p.m. Eastern. So, long-time New York sports writer, 4-time New York Times best-selling author, the great Ian O'Connor, who's got a book coming out this summer profiling Aaron Rodgers, will be joining me on the show today. He recently visited with Aaron Rodgers at his home in California, so we're going to have Ian on. Oh, yeah, Ian was the guy who said Rodgers looked jacked. So Ian's going to come on the show. Got so much respect for Ian and, the incredible books he's published, the Belichick book, the Derek Jeter book, The Captain. He's written so many great sports books. He wrote the Coach K book that was a bestseller 2 years ago. So Ian's coming on the show later today, Jet fans, and we will talk all things Aaron Rodgers with him, all things Jets, as he's been working on this book for a long time already. So I'm looking forward to having Ian on the show. He's way higher on the Jets than most of the New York media is, which I think is pretty cool. Now, maybe he has to be because he needs the book to do well, and that will help if the Jets are good. But I think it's going to be a great interview later today, 4 p.m. Eastern. So definitely check that out on the channel if you're not watching this live right now, or maybe it's after 4 and you're watching this. So check that out if it's already aired. Robby, appreciate you, man. This was a lot of fun and good to get you back in your weekly spot. And I'll talk to you next week.
You got it. Take care, guys.
He's Robby Sabo. My name is Jake Asman. Please hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. Once again, Jet fans, thank you for your support and helping us reach over 36,000 subscribers. I'm going to be taping an exclusive Patreon-only episode of the Jake Asman Show today, telling behind-the-scenes stories from the NFL Combine, some of the wild nights out, some of the different things we saw. I'm taping that podcast with Will Parkinson, who's got some great stories to share off the record as well. So that's only for Patreon users. So sign up for my Patreon if you want that. Plus, I want to give a huge shout out at the buzzer here to Mr. Magoo, who signed up for the year on my Patreon last night, and Mike Logue, our 2 most recent Patreon subscribers. So bonus content coming with Will later today. So be on the lookout for that. And I'll be back later on the channel at 4 p.m. Eastern with Ian O'Connor set to join. Talk to you guys soon. JETS, Jets. Ladies and gentlemen, joining us right now is none other than Chiefs fan. Hello, Chiefs fan.
Yo, last night I was outside talking and I walked over and checked on my neighbor and I found out my neighbor passed away in his lawn chair. So
This call was not going where I thought it was going. Chiefs
well,
fan. I'm not gonna lie to you.
the old man had a bladder problems. Let's just say that he was 90s. He didn't take his medication, and he was gonna smoke a cigar with me, but he wasn't there.
Is it a real story?
This is a real story.
And he passed away on his lawn chair in the middle of the Super Bowl.
Walked inside of his house, checked on his dog, poured a shot of vodka, and I'm like, this isn't gonna be enough. Chugged about 1/4 of the vodka that we usually drink. I'm like, the old man had to die during the big game, but yeah, I was happy we won.
Yeah, hey, Chiefs fan, congrats on the Super Bowl win, man. I don't know what to say. I figured this was going to be a celebratory call for the great Chiefs fan, and it was not that.